I think that covers it. Hi, welcome to SilverBear Books. I am the hairiest host who loves books the most. I am SilverBear, and this is the sweetest little bear that was ever in there. That is Honey Bear. So today I'm going to be responding to 25 bookish questions for Bookstagram. BookTok, BookTube, I don't care. I do all of those things. So, it's a sequence of 25 questions. This may be a two-parter depending on how much of a rant I end up going on, but I've sort of jotted down my thoughts to the questions, and here are my answers. So the first question is, if there were one book that you can make everyone read, what would it be? So I've gone for an option here, not because I think it's the best book I've ever read, or I think it's necessarily something that's going to change everybody's lives, but Cheating Death, Stealing Life, the autobiography of the professional wrestler Eddie Guerrero is my choice for this first question. And the main reason for that is because I think it's such a niche genre that most people are never going to read it. Unless you're already a fan of professional wrestling, you're not going to go out of your way to find this book. And that would be a tremendous shame. While it's not necessarily the best written, it's a ghost-written autobiography, it's not the best written I've ever seen, but Eddie Guerrero's story is such a powerful and impactful story. It's the story of a man who was born into a professional wrestling dynasty. His father, Gory Guerrero, was one of the greatest Mexican professional wrestlers of all time. Probably top 3 in that category. And he was one of many, many siblings. His brothers were all professional wrestlers. And so he had a legacy to uphold. But he also came along at a time where the landscape in his business was changing. And he became the most successful of his brothers, despite really never coming close to the pinnacle of his own business up until a certain point. And then addiction takes hold, life begins to overwhelm him, and he falls from grace only to hit rock bottom as hard as you can imagine a person hitting rock bottom. He loses everything. And then a combination of faith, perseverance, hard work, and trust, and he overcomes demons that would have absolutely shattered most people to reach the pinnacle of his profession. And it's an amazing story, even if it's not the best written, and I don't think most people are going to come across this. So Cheating Death, Stealing Life, in light of Guerrero's passing in 2004 or 5, I still remember the day I read about it in the newspaper. It is a wonderful, powerful story. So that's something I think most people should read. What makes or breaks books for you? Is it the grammar, typos, a badly written plot, annoying characters? All of those things certainly play a part. If you've got primary school grade level grammar and punctuation, that's going to be a problem, but that's not something I come across. Most books are sleek enough and well edited enough that that's probably not going to be something you're going to come across. Badly written plot certainly can be a bit of a problem, but ultimately for me it's characters. I've read a few classics this year, The Sun Also Rises, The Great Gatsby being 2 examples, and I think I'm going to discuss one of those a bit later, but that there was nobody that I liked. Or failing that, nobody I cared about. And that's enough. It doesn't matter how good of a writer you are. If I don't care about any of your characters, we're done. There's nothing I can do with that. You could have the most interesting plot in the entire world, but if I don't care about who it's happening to, we're finished. And yeah, I think that was my problem with The Sun Also Rises, where Hemingway was a gorgeous writer, but good God, I just didn't care. Did not care about a soul in that book. So yeah, characters. make or break for me. Just as a sort of an aside to that, you take the famous slog from the Wheel of Time, which I think is debatably books 7, 8, 9, 10, or 8, 9, 10, is it? I think. And people complain about that a lot. However, I like almost all of those characters. And so I was cool just chilling with them for 3 books. And so the famous slog from the Wheel of Time for me was actually something that was perfectly fine. I was cool to just marinate with these characters for 2,000 pages. Not a problem for me at all. So, character. If you can be a fictional character for a day, whom would you choose? And I'm going to go with somebody whose personality type is really the opposite of mine. Monkey D. Luffy from One Piece. Why? A person who's so infinitely positive, a person who is so loyally dedicated to his friends and is willing to fight through anything, but at the same time maintaining this insanely positive outlook on life. I envy that so very much. As a person who tends to be a little bit on the pessimistic side, and, you know, I guess everyone sort of wishes they could be the hero in their life, and so few people get the opportunity to do that. But Luffy is just this positive ball of energy that continually follows through on everything, and I respect the heck out of that. So it was the reason that one of the latest issues that I read of One Piece had such a strong emotional resonance. To see Luffy crack a little bit was heartbreaking for me. So yeah, certainly Monkey D. Luffy. Do you like grey characters in a book? I do, but only when they're well done. So sometimes when people say, oh, I've written this morally grey character, it's a good character. It's not necessarily a morally grey character. They're just a good guy wearing black clothes. Can't think of a solid... I'll come back to you with an example of that, but a good example, which is the next question, who is your favorite grey character in fiction? A good example of this is the lead character of the Poppy War, where she has to make some truly harrowing decisions. And if you've read the first Poppy War, you'll know what I'm talking about. But you completely understand how they get there. You completely understand their morals and motivations for doing what they do. And Rin was such an interesting character in that sense. And that's... I guess you could make the argument maybe that Rin's just an out-and-out villain, but I'm going to say Rin is a great example of a morally grey character for me, as opposed to, yeah, just a good guy in a black cloak. Yeah. Do you read non-fiction or self-help? If so, what did you read most recently? I do, all the time. Self-help books, not as much. I read stuff that's about psychology a fair bit, and that sort of does sometimes fall under the self-help category, but I'm more in that psychology area. I have read some self-help books, but they're not really my number one genre. Most recently, I read The Happiness Hypothesis by Jonathan Haidt, which I found really interesting. Again, more focused on psychology, but it is the discussing how we as people process things, how the psychology of our brain works, and how that influences our behavior. And I would hope that I take the learnings from those things and apply them to my life. So I consider that self-help, certainly. So yeah, The Happiness Hypothesis by Jonathan Haidt was a good read. And name a hyped book that fell short for you. This is where The Sun Also Rises and The Great Gatsby both get a mention here. They are both absolutely considered classics of English literature, and I can understand why. Fitzgerald and Hemingway are both very skilled writers in creating characters and environments that are very accessible, very vivid, very detailed. They really do transport you to a time and place. Ironically enough, I think both the 1920s, if I'm not wrong. America, Spain, France. But the issue with The Sun Also Rises and The Great Gatsby is I didn't like anyone. I didn't care about anyone. The Sun Also Rises, it was mostly just apathy. I didn't give a stuff one way or the other about anybody. The Great Gatsby, I actively disliked almost everybody, which is even worse. I guess to an extent, I suppose, hating everybody, at least I want to see them fail. And I guess that's kind of the John Cena thing. If they're responding, I guess at least it's a good thing. But if I can't get behind a character, at least one in your whole book, then you've lost me. And The Sun Also Rises, I was so hyped to read it. I really think Hemingway is a great writer in terms of prose style, and so was F. Scott Fitzgerald, but it just fell really flat because I just didn't care. I didn't care about anything that was going on or any of the people it was happening to. Really, really fell flat for me. Which of the usual romance tropes works best for you? So I love a love triangle. I love it when, well, first of all, they're never actually triangles, because really it's girl, boy, boy, or boy, girl, girl, I suppose, but I don't think I've ever read one of those. And there's no interplay between them, so it's not really a triangle, it's more of an arrow. But anyway, the idea of a character having two people that they deeply care for and truly love, and having to make an impossible choice between them, that is a trope which for me should work really well. The issue is I very rarely ever see one. The Twilight love triangle that is so infamous, the Team Jacob, Team Edward thing, she was always Team Edward. There was never a question about which one of them she was going to pick. You go to Fourth Wing, where is it Dane? See, he's so unimportant, I don't even care. And again, she was always going to pick Shadow Daddy. And then you go to A Court of Thorns and Roses, where it's Tamlin or Rhysand. And again, pretty much as soon as book 2 kicks in, we know which way she's going. It's not a question. And so I so rarely see love triangles where there are two legitimate choices. So I love the idea of a love triangle. If you have recommendations for good, legitimate love triangles, please let me know, because that is a trope that I love in theory. I just don't see it executed very well very often. What trope do I hate? This is probably really unfair, because for much the same reason, I hate enemies to lovers. I love it in theory, again, but most of the time, they're not really enemies. It's sort of some grand misunderstanding, or, you know, someone's hiding something. So they're not truly enemies in the first place. Whereas, in theory, I would love enemies to lovers where they are truly on opposite sides of a conflict and something happens to force them together, that forces them to bond, form a relationship, etc. But the same with the love triangle, I just never see it done well, or at least not in a way that I believe. The sort of contrivances that have to happen in order for them to get to that point never work for me. So, yeah. If you have any advice on that one too, please let me know. What am I currently reading? Robin Hobb's Royal Assassin. For how much I'm enjoying this book, I am so easily distracted. That is ADD brain like you wouldn't believe. I do have ADD. That isn't me teasing people. That is an actual commentary on myself. But I have stopped reading that book 5 times already to read 4 different arc books and then finish What was I finishing? A book of poetry by Banjo Patterson, actually. And I don't know why. I'm really enjoying it. Like, everything about it works for me. Robin Hobb's prose is so gorgeous. Her characters are so fleshed out and realized. Her world is fantastic. I like just about every character in it, or I hate the ones that I'm supposed to hate appropriately. I can't tell you why I keep ducking away from it. I will finish it this week, but I don't know why it's taking so long. It's really good. I just have a short attention span. Editing Adam here. I didn't realize how long this was going to be, so I've decided to break it into 2 parts. So thank you for watching, and please like, share, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you in part 2. Cheers.